What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I know I just made a video with an update, but I want to give you some more updates. So I'll just breeze through this really quick because obviously the Chiefs and the Texans reporting today, and there have been some updates on the discussions and negotiations between the NFL and NFLPA and so on and so forth. So let's jump right into it. First is this report from Yahoo Sports. Here's what it's like to be one of the first NFL teams opening training camp amid COVID-19. So, I mean, this is just like hours into it, right? So this is literally just the very like few seconds of getting into the overall training camp. First few seconds. With 2020 poised to be the most unusual NFL season in years due to the COVID-19 pandemic, there's no shortage of uncertainties for teams to navigate. But someone has to be the first to trudge through that wilderness. Not really. They could do the right thing and just shut it down and not take foolish, unnecessary risks, but okay. And one of the first teams to do so is the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, who by nature of their training camp schedule have been tasked with getting their organization COVID safe without the luxury of watching other NFL teams do it. The Chiefs and the Houston Texans were the first NFL teams to have rookies scheduled to report on Monday. That's today. They were also among the first teams to have their IDER, which stands for Infectious Disease Emergency Response, plan approved by the NFLPA over the weekend. As of Monday afternoon, 7 teams total have had their IDER plans approved by the NFLPA, a source tells Yahoo Sports, though that's a fluid number that figures to grow as the union analyzes other teams' plans. This is a critical step for those hoping for a return to football, since IDERs outline the steps and procedures teams will take if an outbreak occurs within the building, which in my previous videos over the past several days, we've been going over ad nauseum about the battles between the details, which we will update a little bit here in a minute. Additionally, proposals are currently being exchanged between the union and the league as both sides continue to hammer out issues like health and safety protocols, testing and opt-outs so full squads can report. The league-wide report date for all non-rookies, quarterbacks, and injured players is July 28th. So, as this reporter's mentioning, some of those details still have not actually been fully agreed upon by the NFL and NFLPA, which is problematic because they're opening today. Yet the NFLPA is agreeing to these teams protocols, which are essentially the same. My guess is I haven't looked at each team's emergency response plan, obviously, but I would guess that it's pretty close to the guidelines that have been given by the NFL. And if so, I'm hoping I'm wrong, but likely will be proven right in that it's going to be just, a major disaster waiting to happen. But we'll see, man, because again, camps are opening now. More players are going to report tomorrow, and then in 3 days from now, and then in 8 days from now, everybody will be in camp. So we'll see. But in the meantime, teams like the Chiefs and Texans are still tasked with getting their season preparation started, a process that every team begins by acclimating their rookies. And in that regard, the Chiefs have also taken an important step by reaching a verbal agreement with all 6 of their draft selections. I don't give a fuck about that. Chiefs coach Andy Reid, who spoke on Zoom conference call with local reporters on Monday, outlined what those rookies can expect when they arrive. Reid began by acknowledging the efforts of head athletic trainer Rick Burkholder and director of team operations Mitch Reynolds. They have done a phenomenal job of setting everything up to try to be COVID safe the best we possibly can. And look, here's the thing. Let me be clear. I don't doubt that there are some people, probably a lot of the coaches and stuff like that, who are trying their best to walk that fine line and, be able to get football back and still do it safely. But if they believe they can, they're foolish. Because again, there are, even if the guidelines are stringently followed, it's still, again, we have to wait and see, but what I believe to be woefully inadequate. And, it's just a massive gamble, and I don't think it's worth taking. So that's where we start. We're starting with a couple of days of COVID testing for the players. They do back-to-back tests. Anyway, what I was saying is I believe they're trying to, a lot of them are probably trying to do the best that they can, but it's just not going to be enough, man. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong, because this is people's lives that are on the line here. Then starting Wednesday, Reid said rookies will begin the process of taking their physicals, getting their equipment sorted out, and doing whatever media obligations they have. There are a couple days for that takes you into 4 days here, Reid said, and then there's a point where we're going to be able to have guys lift and meet with them and do a potential walkthrough with them. That's kind of how that sets up, and that goes for an extended period. Reed indicated he was pleased with the team's setup for training camp, which will be held at the Chiefs team facility instead of at Missouri Western State University in St. Joseph, Missouri, where camp is typically held. We're going to do everything out of the stadium, Reed said. The way they've set it up, we could have a ton of people social distanced, more than we have with our football team. They've got it all set up with monitors and everything else. Each media room is set up. They've split Arrowhead Stadium in half, so on one half, the defense is on one side and the offense is on the other side. I mean, it's really something to watch. Look, man, I mean, we'll see. Again, we'll see if these protocols pan out. I don't think it's going to work, but okay. As for the COVID testing, a key issue as other leagues have returned to play, Reed noted that players will be tested often and added that players and staff will access to the building will also be tasked with making sure they take precautions when they're both with and away from the team. Listen, there's a responsibility for coaches and players to make sure we handle ourselves right when we're away from it. Reed said, we're still going to keep as much social distancing when we can, and honestly, it's a contact sport, so when we're not in contact, we're going to keep our social distance, and when we're not playing, we have all that set up. I mean, but it is a contact sport, so you can't avoid that, and we'll get to the testing more in a minute because there are updates, but even with daily testing, I mean, it's still near impossible to guarantee that you're not going to have people, especially in a hotbed like Florida, have people bring it into the facility. Once it gets into the facility, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. So anyway, let's see. We're going to have our masks set up and wash our hands and do all those fundamental things. We're going to stay on top of that. Asked when he expects his team to be on the field for something resembling a practice, Reese said it could be a period of at least 10 days as players have to lift weights and attend meetings and possibly go through walkthroughs first. They're working through this, but it will be about 8 days, which ends up being about 10 with days off, Reed said. So that's what we know at this point, and it seems like a pretty solid plan to allow the guys to ramp up and get themselves where they need to be. I mean, I'm not an expert, and he's definitely one of the better coaches in the league, but I kind of doubt that he even thinks that's enough ramp-up time. But, I mean, he's saying it, so I guess he must. But, yeah, I mean, I just think there are, disaster after disaster after disaster waiting to happen. And I know that was a bit lengthy, but that kind of gives you an idea of, what to expect over the coming days. Like I said, I mean, we're only 8 days away from all players reporting to camp. The Dolphins rookies would be reporting tomorrow, but they're not. They did push it back a couple days, which means instead of tomorrow, the Dolphins rookies will be reporting Thursday on the 23rd, along with the quarterbacks and the injured players. So they'll be coming in together in a lump, that group of people, and then on the 28th, you'll have the rest of them come in. And I just don't think they can control it. I just don't think it's possible. But again, I hope they prove me wrong, and we'll see, because, I mean, I told you guys, this is that moment, right? They can skate by and skate by and skate by through the off-season, doing it virtually until training camp. This is the moment where we're going to find out. Now that training camps are opening, and like I said, we've already had 2.5% of the player population test positive, and that was before they brought everybody together. So we'll see how it turns out. Again, and I'll say this just one more time, I hope they prove me wrong, but from the way I see it, the way I evaluate this situation and how I've been following COVID and the numbers and all that stuff, it's just going to be an unmitigated disaster, and eventually at some point I believe the NFL season is just going to get shut down inevitably because of it. So we'll see what happens. Like I said, we're in the fucking thick of it now, so we won't have to wait too much longer. Alright, and sorry, so one more thing before I get up out of here, because I almost forgot. I want to let you guys know about the update to the testing. I kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier, but this is coming from multiple sources. This from NFL.com. Players will receive daily COVID-19 tests for the first 2 weeks of camp. Okay. I mean, daily testing is good. As I said before, I don't think it's going to be enough, but it's only for 2 weeks as of right now. So here's the details. NFL players will be tested every day for the first 2 weeks of training camp. Dr. Alan Sills, the league's chief medical officer, said in a conference call, and it is expected that players will need more than one negative test before first being allowed to enter team facilities. At the 2-week mark, the rate of positive tests for those tested, players, coaches, and staff who are in close contact with the football team will be examined, and if the rate of positive tests is below 5%, testing will move to every other day. Training camp is set to begin for the entire league July 28th. Let me just say that even if that's the case, even if it is below 5%, that is dangerously arrogant to then be like, oh, we're good. Let's just do every other day. Okay. The news came after a series of prominent players took to social media Sunday to question the league's readiness on health and safety measures for the opening of camps. The frequency of testing had been one of the biggest outstanding issues to be resolved between the league and the players' union. Players had pushed for daily testing, and one owner said late last week that teams have been told there could be a considerable number of positive tests as players travel from their homes to gather at their team facilities over the next week. But doctors for the league and the union have assured teams that once players get into the protocols and are being tested regularly, the positivity rate should drop. Okay. If a player tests positive but has no symptoms, he can return to the facility 10 days after the initial positive test, or if he receives 2 consecutive negative tests within 5 days of the initial positive test. If the player has a positive test and symptoms, he can return after at least 10 days have passed since the symptoms first appeared, and at least 72 hours have passed since he last experienced symptoms. Players who have close contact with someone who has symptoms will be tested and isolated as soon as possible. If the test is negative, then and the player continues to have no symptoms, he may return to the facility but will have increased symptom monitoring and more frequent testing. If the player is close contact with someone who has a positive COVID-19 test, he will be tested, and even if the test is negative and the player has no symptoms, he would need a second negative test before being allowed to return. I mean, and look, to be fair, a lot of these are solid, right? I don't think overall it's going to be adequate enough, but even if they're like on point with these regulations and protocols, my guess is they're going to be having dudes have to spend significant time out throughout the entire season should there be one. So they're going to have constant issues with like, oh man, how are we going to plan for this guy out and that guy out and these guys out and this and blah, blah, blah. And it's going to just continue to be a mess the more that they go down this fucking path. Players will wear proximity recording devices during all team activities at the facility, practice, team travel, and the data from those devices will provide highly precise contact tracing information. Sills said that will help identify which other players and staff an infected player has come in close contact with so that they can be tested and isolated quickly. That is good. That will become especially important as practices and games begin. Sills emphasized, though, that players and staff will still bear the responsibility of modifying their behavior at the facility and away from it to mitigate the risk of infection. Alright, we cannot test our way to safety, he said. Sills said that protocols will undoubtedly change during the season as doctors learn more about the virus and new tests are developed. Among the outstanding issues that still remain between the league and the players' union is the structure of training camp. There's expected to be a weeks-long conditioning period before players put on pads for a regular practice, and the sides are still discussing how many, if any, preseason games will be played. Just note that the NFL has said most recently that they still want one game, but they're willing to drop it to one. So I guess progress on that front too, whatever. But I mean, it's just whatever. We'll see how this goes. I mean, there's still a lot of outstanding issues that don't have anywhere near adequate fucking answers. So we'll see how it goes, man. There's expected to be, I said that already, and the sides are in still discussion. Players want no preseason games, while the league has wanted 2, although people familiar with those conversations have indicated a softening of the league's position on the preseason. As I mentioned, they are talking about doing just 1 game. Alright guys, with that, I'm going to get out of here. I hope you guys appreciate my perspective. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Share my channel and videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And of course, as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro.